call this meeting of the Anchorage Assembly to order. Madam Clerk, can you please take a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Weddleton?
Here in bright shining colors.
Mr. Rivera?
Present.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Here.
Ms. LaFrance?
Here.
Mr. Trainee, are you on the phone?
My phone.
Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Mr. Croft?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. Constant?
Here.
Ms. Domboski?
Ms. Domboski is excused. She's on her way.
Mr. Dyson?
Mr. Dyson, I'm not sure where he is.
Ms. Tafts?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Spafford, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Minutes of previous meetings, there are none. Mayor's report. Mr. Falsey, do you have a report on behalf of the mayor? Is he here?
I believe the mayor is on his way. In his stead, I will pass along his traditional nothing to report.
Excellent, thank you. Chair's report, I do not have one. Committee's report, we'll start with you, Mr. Weddleton.
The Community and Economic Development Committee met last Thursday, and you'll see the fruits of our labor today, and AO regarding changes in licensing and waste from marijuana operations. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Assembly Committee on Homelessness last met on October 24th, where we discussed primarily different funding scenarios, which we'll be debating during the budget process. There are going to be no more meetings for the rest of the year, but we will have, similar to last year, a volunteer event sometime in late November or early December. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Nothing to report. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance.
Nothing to report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. Mr. Croft.
No committee report.
Mr. Trainee on the phone, do you have a committee report?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ethics and Election Committee met on October 24th, and we discussed updates to changes to Title 28, that's the election code, and also talked about assembly vacancies. And we'll be continuing those discussions at our future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Constant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Coming up on the 15th, there will be an additional meeting of the Utilities and Enterprise Committee and discussing further the MLMP Chugach Electric transaction. So everybody come. That's a committee of the whole this time because we're getting down to the wire on the transaction.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. So Ms. Domboski and Mr. Dyson are not here. So that ends our committee reports. Could I have a motion to incorporate the addendum?
I'd move to incorporate the following items into the agenda.
First, I'll ask for unanimous consent. All right, seeing no opposition, go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
Item 9F15, ordinance number AO 2018-102, an ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Section 1080-740 regarding marijuana waste disposal to conform to recent state regulation changes with attached Assembly Memorandum number AM 705-2018. Agenda item 9, Foxtrot 16, resolution number AR 2018-347, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly establishing housing development strategies in Eagle River by authorizing and requesting the mayor to enter into an infrastructure coordination agreement. And items 1401 and 02, ordinance number AO 2018-96S, an ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 1080, to allow transfer of a municipal marijuana establishment license similar to state marijuana license transfers from Assembly members Weddleton, Domboski, and Chair Dunbar, with attached Assembly Memorandum number AM 704-2018.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. I will now go down the dais and see if anyone wants to pull an item. Ms. Tafts, do you want to pull an item?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton.
9E1 and 9E2.
Echo 2.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 9 Alpha 3 for reading.
All right. Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn Davidson. Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 9 Alpha 1 for reading. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. Mr. Croft.
Nothing to pull.
Actually, we're going to have you pull Mr. Falsey's item with the...
9 Echo 14. Hold on a second.
Mr. Falsey, what was the number of that item you needed us to pull?
9D14.
9D14.
So-
Okay, I'll pull 9 Delta 14.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Mr. Trainee, do you have a motion on an item?
Yes, I don't need the motion. It's just item 9F16. I need the public hearing postponed till December 4th.
Okay.
Right now it reflects October 20th.
So I will set the
Move.
public hearing for, what was the item number again? 9
F16.
December 4th. The clerk's office can do that.
9 Foxtrot 16 for December 4th. Is there any opposition to doing so? Okay, not seeing any. That will be set for public hearing on December 4th. Any other items, Mr. Trainee?
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No items this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Constant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any items to pull, but on item 9D14, just for the purposes of full disclosure, Rick Davidge is married to my real estate broker. I don't believe I have a conflict because he and I have no financial relationship, but I just want to make sure that I put that on the record.
Thank you. It's the ruling of the chair you don't have a conflict. Moreover, we're not taking action tonight. The goal, I believe, is to postpone it because it needs to be edited. There was a typo in the motion.
I'm sorry, 9D4. I might have misspoken. 9D14. I'm sorry, that was dyslexic. But 9D4.
Oh, okay.
He's being appointed or reappointed to the bidding review board.
Okay.
And again, it's close enough that I should say something, but I don't think we have any fiduciary relationship. We don't trade money.
Yeah. It's the ruling of the chair that you do not have a conflict. Does anyone wish to challenge that ruling? Okay. All right. Nobody pulled 9 Alpha 2? Oh, we're not pulling it. Okay, great. All right. So any other items? I have 9 Alpha 1 pulled by Ms. LaFrance, 9 Alpha 3 pulled by Mr. Rivera, 9 Delta 14 pulled by Mr. Croft, 9 Echo 1 pulled by Mr. Weddleton, 9 Echo 2 pulled by Mr. Weddleton. Okay. All right. Let's please have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the pulled items.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Please vote on the consent agenda. Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Thank you. That item passes unanimously 9-0. Unanimous for those present. Okay, we'll now go down through each item. First, we have 9 Alpha 1. Let's see if I can find it. Resolution number AR 2018-329, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating November 15, 2018 as Anchorage Recycles Day. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ask for unanimous consent. Seeing no opposition, that is approved. Who is reading? Who is presenting?
I am reading.
Wonderful. So let's go down and all these folks in these bright jackets, if they could come forward.
AR number 2018-329. A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating November 15, 2018 as Anchorage Recycles Day. Whereas America Recycles Day is a national campaign that recognizes the importance of minimizing waste by reusing and recycling, supports American manufacturing while conserving valuable resources, and protects our nation's economic and environmental health, and whereas the America Recycles campaign has grown significantly in participation, and recycling across the state of Alaska has increased in recent years. And whereas recycling is steadily becoming more commonplace throughout Anchorage as residents work with local recycling agencies and their partners to make recycling a regular part of residents' daily lives. And whereas the municipality of Anchorage's Solid Waste Services is further promoting recycling efforts in Alaska by offering commercial and residential recycling, community composting, and curbside organics programs to the public, partnering with local nonprofits like Remade to divert reusable goods away from landfills, and supporting other private recycling haulers in their education efforts. And whereas Solid Waste Services also offers online quizzes to find out what type of recycler you are, how to be a better recycler, and a free recycling app called Recycle Coach to help the public keep track of their pickup day, verify recyclable items, and get tips for recycling. And now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly encourages all of Anchorage to recycle, buy recycled goods, and help teach others the benefits of recycling, and to celebrate and recognize Thursday, November 15, 2018, as Anchorage Recycles Day. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly the 7th day of November, 2018.
I just want to say a big thank you to the Anchorage Assembly for recognizing Anchorage Recycling Day. Recycling is one of the best ways that we can protect the environment and help promote the economic well-being of the city of Anchorage. I'm Susanna Caldwell. I'm the recycling coordinator at Solid Waste Services, and I'm joined here with Andres Benitez Ospina. He is the Anchorage School District recycling coordinator. I'm also joined here with members of the Anchorage School District Green Schools team at Rogers Park Elementary School, Baxter Elementary, and West High School. This year, Alaska Waste and Solid Waste Services partnered with the Anchorage School District to improve recycling within the school district. And one of the initiatives that came out of that was our Green Schools program. It's a program where we teach kids how to recycle because we need them to be our recycling champions moving forward. Each school creates their own team, and part of that, they actually assess their own waste. They dig through their trash. They figure out what they're throwing away, and then they come up with a plan to how to recycle it. And then they go out and they do it, and they promote recycling to their peers and their parents, and they just try to get everybody on board with recycling. So with that, I'd love to introduce Eugenia Sanford. She is a member of the West High School Green Schools team, and she's going to talk just a little bit about why recycling is important for her.
Hi, my name is Eugenia Sanford, and 9th grade and West High. I recycle because to help slow down global warming. Thank you to the Anchorage Assembly for supporting our work.
Thank you. Do you have anything further?
Nope.
I have a question, and Mr. Wells has a question. My question is, who is Davion? What's the story with the sign?
He couldn't be with us today, and he wanted to be here.
Okay, wonderful, good to know. Mr. Welton, do you have a question?
Inquiring minds think alike.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Mr. Peterson.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering, as the recycling coordinator, do you reach out to community councils to make presentations ever?
I would be happy to do so.
I actually was discussing with a president of one of my community councils who had a meeting last week, and she was saying that she was interested in recycling, and so I may give her your contact information if you don't mind.
I present to community groups all the time, so I would love to connect.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Well, there are no further questions. Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Next up is resolution number AR 2018-344, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating the month of November 2018 as Native American and Alaska Native Heritage Month, and November 23rd, 2018 as Native American and Native Alaskan Heritage Day. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I ask for unanimous consent on this item. Seeing no and hearing no opposition, that is approved. Who is reading and who is presenting?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am reading.
And I am presenting.
Okay, please go ahead.
A resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing and celebrating the month of November 2018 as Native American and Alaska Native Heritage Month and November 23rd, 2018 as Native American and Native Alaskan Heritage Day. Whereas November is National American Indian and Alaska Native Heritage Month, and Friday, November 23rd, 2018 is Alaska Native Heritage Day, a month and a day to celebrate Alaska Native and American Indian cultures and the traditions and contributions of Native Americans and Alaska Natives. And whereas in 2016, almost 20% of Alaska's population identified as American Indian or Alaska Native, which is by far the highest of any state. And whereas for thousands of years, Alaska Natives have preserved their rich traditions and passed their cultural heritage from generation to generation. And whereas many organizations are hosting activities all month long to celebrate the traditions and cultural heritage of indigenous peoples. For example, the First Alaskans Institute is hosting the Howard Rock and Ted Stevens Smokehouse Gala to honor Alaska Native peoples at the Captain Cook Hotel on November 17th. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly recognizes and celebrates November 2018 as Alaska Native and American Indian Heritage Month and November 23rd, 2018 as Alaska Native Heritage Day, honoring those who have so greatly contributed to our community, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 7th day of November 2018.
Chief Leggett, would you like to say some words?
Sure. Hello, Anchorage Assembly. Again, my name is Aaron Leggett. I'm the president of the Native Village of Eklutna, but I'm actually not here representing the village, although this does certainly pertain to our people. I'm representing on behalf of the president of the Alaska Native American Heritage Month, who it just so happens I'm actually married to, Cheyenne Beatty, unfortunately. Cheyenne is at a 5-month-long internship at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, but the board wanted to have a representative, and since, well, I'm married to the president, here I am. So it's my honor to accept this official resolution on behalf of the Anchorage Assembly and on behalf of the Alaska Native American Heritage Month Board. I want to say, in our language, Chinen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leggett. We have one question, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem.
Mr. Constant?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Leggett. Good evening. I don't know if you have heard, but on Thursday night from 4:30 to 7 p.m. at the Guest House on 4th Avenue, there's going to be an open house discussing the potential master planning for the site at 3rd and Carlock that used to be the hospital. Mm-hmm. And I'm hopeful that you might have some time to come and see and bring some input. I know that Mr. McQueen from the corporation is going to be coming, and I would really appreciate it if you all also could consider making an appearance and hearing what's happening.
Yeah, I'd like to. Unfortunately, I also have a conflict tomorrow evening over at APU, Winona Leduc. There's an event going on. So I'm in close contact with Curtis. I sit on the board of Eklutna Inc. as well, so we have quite a bit of dialogue. But we're certainly interested in what goes on with that site. So, and if, anytime you'd like to reach out to me, please feel free as well.
Thank you, I will. And my hope is that site can become an area where we identify and celebrate the Dena'ina culture in the region.
Well, that would be great. I think there's a few challenges, obviously, at that site, seismically and also environmental cleanup. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Before I let you go, Mr. Leggett, I don't know if I ever actually publicly thanked you or my colleagues realized the crucial role you played in the naming of Chanshni Muldoon Park. I don't remember if you were there the night that the group came, but just thank you for your linguistic help there, and it's remarkable the degree to which it's already been integrated into the neighborhood there, so thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it was a great honor for me growing up on the east side of Anchorage. It's always had an affinity, and it is amazing. I was at the dedication for the park in September, and I think it's going to be a great community space, and it's something I think that our city can really be proud of, not only for a beautiful park, but also honoring and recognizing my people, the first people of this area. So, Chinen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leggett. There are no further questions. Thank you so much for coming tonight. All right, that takes us down to item 9 Delta 14.
Can I ask Mr. Falsey what he'd like us to do on that one?
I think I need to first read the title, Madam Clerk. Assembly Memorandum Number AM 684-2018, sole source payment to Providence Alaska Medical Center to provide sexual assault response team examinations for the Municipality of Anchorage Department of Health and Human Services Purchasing Department. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Actually, let me pause that. This is where Mr. Croft had the right idea. Mr. Falsey, what would you like us to do with this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a typographical error in this. We intend to pull this one and then replace it with another item at the future Assembly meeting. So either the Assembly could take no action on this, or I think the traditional action has been to suspend it to suspend it indefinitely. Or
Postpone it.
indefinitely.
Can we get a motion to postpone indefinitely?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any opposition to that? So to be clear, we are going to pass this item as soon as we get a corrected version before us, but there was a typographical error. Okay. Ask for unanimous consent. Not seeing any opposition to that motion, so that is postponed indefinitely. We are now down to item 9 Echo 1. What do we do with that? Information Memorandum Number AIM 117-2018, Municipal Airports Aviation Commission resolutions for the Assembly's consideration. Mayor's Office. What is the will of the body?
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Weddleton, do you have any discussion on this?
This is comments from the Airport Aviation Advisory Commission regarding Merrill Field, and it is so far removed from my impression of what goes on there in the finances. I'd hope we would have a work session that would include this commission if we can. That's why I pulled it, just to call for that.
Yeah, I share your sentiments, Mr. Weddleton. I saw a question you had asked the administration about it, and I read through and had very much the same thought. They're building all of these buildings, these wonderful new buildings, at the same time they're saying that we don't have any money. It doesn't really make sense. Before I get to you, Mr. Constant, can we hear a little bit from the administration about this? I mean, do you feel a work session is appropriate at this time, or do you want to do some legwork first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are still doing some internal legwork, so I think if we had the benefit of a few more weeks, we probably would have more helpful information to present to the Assembly.
Yeah, I'm not in a rush. It just highlighted something.
So, I mean, for those who perhaps are watching at home or those my colleagues, it's not a substantive item tonight before us. If we pass it or accept it, doesn't mean we actually agree with it. It just says that, yes, we received this thing from this commission, and we don't necessarily have to take any action on it. And I think the inclination right now is not to do so until there has been a more substantive discussion. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thank you. And, the one thing that I circled on the document that caught my attention was exactly the same thing, the construction of all these new buildings, specifically 21 new hangars. And the question I had is, what is the revenue position of 21 new hangars? And that is something that can wait until later to know occupancy. Are they built? Are they up? Are they raising money? And so I'm happy to hear that answer down the road. But that's specifically the line that caught my attention.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Croft?
Yeah, following up on all those comments, the idea that we would use general funds, that we'd use our municipal and tax cap funds, property tax mainly, for this, I'm very concerned about. So I would like it to be developed more, maybe at a work session. It also seems to me to be an appropriate bondable amount if we were going to have some contribution from the city. That is, either a revenue bond based on the revenue that the Merrill Field would get, or a municipal bond that the people got a say on and whether they thought it was appropriate. So, it's capital projects. I think we could use that. I'd at least like when the administration or when we decide that we'd like a work session on it, that proposal to get some more information on it. Because these numbers, if we just paid for them with regular funds, would blow a big hole in the budget. That's, the tender that we're talking about for the fire department, that's 10 police officers. And so the $2 million they were talking about as matching grants for last year and this year. So if we do need the money, I'd like bonding to be considered.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thanks. Just on that note, the other vehicle would be certificates of participation. There are 21 new buildings, and maybe they could support themselves through some creative vehicle, or I don't know.
I don't think we actually own, well, regardless, we'll talk about that more at some future date once the sort of topic becomes more ripe for our consideration. All right, so that was, I guess we need to take a vote on it, huh?
Well, you have a motion and a second to accept.
Yep.
So you can either take no action or you can vote on it.
Well, I don't see any reason not to accept because it doesn't imply agreement. Let's vote on accepting. Vote on Mr. Weddleton's motion, please. Mr. Trainee?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. That passes 9-0. All right, we are now on item 9E2, Information Memorandum number AIM 118-2018, Finding of Fact, Conclusions, and Recommendations of the Anchorage Transportation Commission following completion of the 2018 Market Conciliation Review of Taxicab Services within the municipality. What is the will of the body?
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Weddleton, you pulled this item?
I had a few questions here. It's puzzling if Mr. Musser could step forward.
Mr. Musser, are you here tonight? Oh, there he is.
I guess it's, we made significant changes to the taxi industry 3 years ago or something, a couple Decembers ago, and opened it up substantially. So we've gone through a couple years of fairly open permitting, and it's getting closer. And we've heard from the taxi industry at transportation committee meetings and individual interactions that this has been a disaster for them. They're not making any money. It's very emphatic, and they're extremely concerned. Then I read this, and I'm going, oh, it's not so bad. Commission finds no evidence was received by the public to indicate either a positive or negative impact on for-hire transportation in regards to TNCs, Uber and Lyft coming in. Looks like a 15.2% impact, presumably less driving, which is a lot, but given the impact of the internet on most businesses, particularly retail, that's nowhere near what we're facing. So this makes it look like we're kind of A-OK in the taxi business after opening it up. Did I get the right impression?
Yeah, through the chair, I think the fairest way to respond to that is partially. Regulation or openness is very divisive. The Commission worked hard to try to compel those stakeholders on the taxi side of the industry to bring forth something that would really support adverse impacts or not. And they just received nothing. So that left the Commission and our office to look at both a per-trip impact as we get that data, and it saw a real significant hit, and then looking over 12 months, it saw a clawback on the taxi industry. So, and we see that because we've got a pretty good fixed number of trips per month, in this community, and it holds pretty constant. So, it divides. Uber and Lyft also have a very high turnover for a variety of reasons. So what the state did when they enacted their statute preempting us, they really created some disparities, which aren't significant, but really could be fixed, to help it. It's expressly in state law that the taxi industry cannot charge a percentage of fare, which really becomes detrimental to the digital mode of operation, as that's really the trend, the way it's going. That could be fixed, but it needs to be fixed at the state level. The real question that this body heard in 18 months, and that the Commission continues to hear from the legacy stakeholders, really is, the impact of additional permits on value. It's long been our position that it's a secondary market created by those stakeholders, and it's a moral question. It's like making a stock investment or buying a house hoping the value goes up. So they shied away from it. It's clear there's some disparities, and I think the Commission's goal is really to go forward and see if we can do something on the disability side, but really get the Anchorage Caucus or the Muni League to look and solve some of them, like the pay disparities. The state assesses a $250 registration fee on my taxis. They don't on the TNCs. So that's where we hear about these fee kind of things. Locally, the issue's insurance and really the lease rates. That's it. But I think they worked hard, and that's where it's at. Okay. So it's long-winded to say I don't believe that it's devastating. The Commission does not believe it's as devastating as an industry as had been portrayed in some respects.
Well, my question, Mr. Musser, is we're still doing these sales of the permits, and if there was no value in the permits anymore and there was no market to be had or no market share left to be had, then we wouldn't be selling them. We'd be offering them out, and then they wouldn't be getting sold. Is that the case? I mean, are any of them selling when we offer them, when we auction them?
Through the chair, Mr. Chair, I'd like to say we're not selling anything. We're providing a bid for the option to operate a cab subject to Title 11. Okay. We transacted a legacy permit for $16,000 last Thursday.
Wow.
There is an active ITB at this time to comply with the permit offering of Title 11. There's a great deal of interest that has been expressed. A lot of bid documents are going out. That opening is November 30th. So we'll see. The auction bids have really declined over the last 2 years, but yet interest remains strong. So I think we'll see at the end of November.
Thank you. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. So, you just kind of tipped into the whole point of that, requesting that study was, in the opinion of the board, is it worthwhile in continuing with the additional license offerings? And so what I think I just heard you say was yes, because there are still buyers.
Through the chair, as the chair actually, Mr. Constant just remarked, I think when we reach the point that real interest is no longer, I guess, present, I think that we reach the point of saturation. As the previous auction that we conducted last December indicated, there's substantial interest in that. So it's a balance. Now the question that really gets answered is, if we flood the market with them, are we having an adverse impact? That's what we're hearing with Uber and Lyft from Chicago to New York to LA to Miami. That they're 10 and 12 to 1, in those operators versus cabs, and is it impacting? So that's.
Thank you, Mr. Musser. Mr. Weddleton.
So you had 4 recommendations, and the 4th one is to establish a working group to review the for-hire service to the disability community. So who would establish that? Is that through your office?
Through the chair. That's a commission working group, and we would invite participation from the Disability Commission and any other stakeholders to look at it. We do see that as a problem, and we do see if the indicators are there. We lost 3 disability permits at the last auction that were not bid on, and we had them turned in. Those operators went to general permits. It is believed that we will likely lose 4 additional disability permits at this auction, and if it does, it's a tremendous negative impact on the community. And so the commission is going to work to try and
Okay, so for that, you don't need anything from us to make
No.
number 4
No,
happen?
sir.
All right.
That's all.
Great. Good luck with it.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you mentioned that some permits have been turned in. Other than the 3 you just mentioned, have there been other regular permits turned in by people that just sort of gave up?
Through the chair, as you might recall, there was one.
One.
Permit 85, legacy permit, was non-renewed for 2018 and reverted to the municipality.
And so if I can follow up on that, are there cars that are out there idle that are maybe only working a couple of days a week? They used to be working 7 days a week, do you know?
Through the chair, we don't have the resource to dive into that at that minute detail. The data mine will be extensive. What the data did indicate, though, is that we've let 30 additional general permits out in an 8-month span. But the data indicates the actual increase of operable permits was, I think, 11. So, and there's, through the chair, there's a variety of factors that there's still maintenance, there's still, accidents and things of that nature. And one of the things the latest ordinance revision in April did was it allowed these vehicle owners to idle their cabs on a calendar month basis, and they're doing that. That actually was a good thing. We have many that go overseas within the Korean community, from Europe, and that was actually quite a welcome benefit. But it impacts what we see. They're obviously not on the road.
Right.
The commission felt strongly there were just too many impacts in too short of a time period to really, make a rock-solid determination on this. And it's long felt that if some of these issues could be resolved both with the state and here, that 2019 would be the year that there'd be enough time, enough permits let, and then it could really be looked at.
Okay.
And so they'll continue the work.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Thank you, Mr. Musser. There are no further questions.
Thank you.
Please vote on this motion to accept. Nope. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
That item passes 9-0. All right, that concludes our consent agenda. We are now on item 11A, Assembly Memorandum number AM 664-2018, Anchorage Community Development Authority Board of Directors appointments, Michael Anthony King, Michael Robert Mills, and Lydia Griffey, Mayor's Office. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Okay, seeing no discussion, please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
That item passes 9-0. We are now on item 11B, Assembly Memorandum number AM 666-2018, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Board of Directors appointments, Aaron David Dotson and Michelle Egan, Mayor's Office. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee. I keep forgetting.
Yes.
That item passes 9-0. We are now on item 12A. This is an appearance request from Mr. Connor Schur. Mr. Schur, are you here?
He is.
Schur or Cher?
He's here.
Great. Would you like to come down and you'll have 3 minutes to speak with us? Oh, yeah.
I have a couple handouts. Should I give those to the clerk and then she can?
Sure. Yeah, please come and give them to the clerk.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, members of the public, my name is Connor Schur, and I'm here to say a few words about the Government Hill Wireless Station. I want to thank Mr. Christopher Constant for the invitation to come before this body, and I am bound to clarify that I come before you as an individual and recently graduated with a Master's of Architecture, having completed a thesis on the same topic I hope to address here. Having lived my entire life here in Anchorage, my ignorance about this structure of such eminence empowered me to uncover and retell its story upon my exposure to the 3 forlorn buildings nestled among residential houses in the idiosyncratic neighborhood of Government Hill. I therefore undertook my thesis endeavoring to uncover its story, retell it, and suggest the next chapters of its life. The wireless station began as a simple squat square building with a cupola and 400-foot aerial array. Born out of World War II and the Alaska Railroad construction, it brought modernity to this frontier town. And for 3 decades, it served as the core of the community, the only connection to the outside. Even as Anchorage developed around it, the structures remained a constant, retaining the memories and stories of the residents of the town. Through its 100 years, it has served as a marker and retainer of the stories and memories of the community, but unfortunately, that same significance has not remained in its upkeep and has now reached a significant state of disrepair. What my thesis argues is that, in fact, we can rely on the retelling of its story and appreciation of its significance through the oral history and the appreciation of the site without relying on the physical fabric of the structures to embody that history. In that way, we can let the structures continue out their life and either decay or have a different use of the materials or the site, but still have the site retain the memories of the structure. And this is through a concept that comes from metaphysics, or essentially from a number of other sources, that the site retains a certain spirit, a certain quality that these memories and stories and these uses of 100 years have embodied there. And while the structures remain, they act as a means of remembering those stories and memories. But when they're gone, that doesn't necessarily mean that the stories are gone and the significance is absent as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scherer. So I have a question, and let's look at a couple others here. On the back of your handout, you talked about an RFP, and I didn't have quite enough time to read through this. What RFP are you talking about exactly? What was it for?
Certainly. You're referring to, on page 4, in 2017, the municipality issued a request for proposals for the redevelopment of the site, either basically along the lines of the standards set forth by the National Register and the Department of Interior. And attached to the RFP were certain suggestions that the community had come up with of ways to redevelop the site and reuse the existing structures. Unfortunately, there were no responses to the RFP. I think that the reason for that has to do with how both broad the responses were, but also how restricting the current regulations on the site are from the land use all the way to the requirements of the National Register.
Thank you. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. Connor, I had an interesting interaction this week with a member of the Eklutna village, and I asked a question of them, what's the tradition of the maintenance of your graves? And I couldn't believe the response. His face lit up like I had touched a lightning rod. And he said, it's our tradition that we, at the grave, let it crumble. And once it finally crumbles, the spirit of our ancestors are free. And it strikes me that this thesis you have proposed taps into something that's lasted in this land for a very long time.
I appreciate that comment. The Dena'ina traditional practices regarding the embodiment of their spirits into artifacts was especially crucial to my approach to this structure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your testimony. So what would you like to see happen then with these buildings?
That's hard for me to answer. Personally, I think that many of the structures retain architectural and aesthetic qualities that would warrant their continued preservation. I don't know that but what my qualms with preservation of it is it turns the structure into too much of a relic. And I would rather to see that it have more of a graceful exit or more of a useful or more of a significant and important use going forward than simply as a museum piece.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. I don't see any further questions. Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Scher. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now on item, let's see. Mr. Croft, are you here? I think he would want to be present for this one. We are now on item 13A, ordinance number AO 2018-91, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, section 25.35.020, and adopting 25.35.067 to require inclusion of a labor peace agreement for hotel operators with leases under the Anchorage Community Development Authority from Assembly Vice Chair Croft. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there's also an S version accompanying it.
There is an S version, but we are actually a little bit too far ahead of our agenda, the clerk just pointed out. So we cannot actually take this up until 6. So given that, good time for. We'll take our regularly scheduled dinner break. We'll be back here at 6:10.
moved the other day on.
I am present for the rest of the evening.
Wonderful. I should also note for the record, and for you, Madam Clerk, at the beginning of the meeting, I couldn't recall where Mr. Dyson is, but then I did recall over dinner that he had told me last week that he would be out of town. He is out of town, so he is excused for the entire meeting. We are having it on an unusual night, of course. Okay, with that, we are at item 13A, ordinance number AO 2018-91, ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, section 25.35.020, and adopting 25.35.067 to require inclusion of a labor peace agreement for hotel operators with leases under the Anchorage Community Development Authority. What is the will of the body?
I would move to postpone assembly action.
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. This, I actually need to open public hearing. Is that right? Public hearing is now open, although I should say for anyone that we are going to postpone this item. So there will be an opportunity to speak on this when we eventually bring it back. That being said, does anyone wish to testify on this item? Go ahead, Mr. If you do, then testify. That's fine. Are we, should I close it and then? Oh, okay. Actually, I intend to close the public hearing tonight. So if you do want to speak on this item, please testify tonight. Please state your name for the record.
Can you repeat that you're closing public hearing tonight?
After we complete public hearing tonight, I will close it. Yes.
Thank you for the clarification. My name is Eugene Carl Hedman. I represent myself. I live in the Mattoon Valley. I follow the public process. If the public process is done appropriately, the decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. Now, what we have here is where I requested previously at the previous public hearing to bring a continuation of the public hearing. Why? You note ACDA, Anchorage Community Development Authority. There's no reference to what the board thinks about this project. Instead, you proceeded to decide at the meeting to continue public hearing, to hold another meeting outside of the public hearing process, discuss this issue, and then go forward with another public hearing. Now, what happened between this time and the previous time? I attended with the ACDA board meeting. At that board meeting, it was noted by the chair that they're concerned about this scenario. When I say they, the chair is concerned. There was no ruling or resolution because there's already a approved development situation, and how their concern is how it's going to affect them and the development that's already been approved. Now, I'm also concerned with what happened just before the break, whereas the one who's bringing before this item, it was noted that Assemblymember Croft would not be present on this item, but now after break I see he's present. That's appropriate. He needs to be present. But why was it a situation that he was not going to be present in this public hearing when he's the one who's submitting these proposals? So I'm really concerned with the submittal of people's proposals and having Assembly members not being present, but something changed during the break. I'd like to know what that was to bring him back in and be seated before the presentation. Now, I do have a strong concern about what's before here. And for those who don't know, there's a development, and looking at how much time I got here, okay, now I note. And it's where and they're planning to deal with the bus terminal is to build a hotel. That's the plan. But the idea of putting something like this through is they're trying to prevent the right to strike, picket, boycott, or take any other economic action detrimental to the hotel project or operations. And they add the words I saw here, and it says ACDA abbreviation or the municipality. Why is this necessary? I'm concerned about you closing public hearing. Before you close public hearing, you should ask the assembly members, and note Assembly Member Dyson is not here, that is there any objection for closing public hearing? The chair should not simply say, I close public hearing. We've got a real sensitive thing here, and I'm the only one that's been addressing this thing and cautioning you before you proceed further on this thing. Caution is the most important thing. This is a hot potato you got here. And I don't doubt in my mind that the public, people in the community read this thing, they'll be here tonight. But there's been no press coverage of what's here. And this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. So I encourage you to stop this meeting and continue public hearing and hear from the people and the press to report this. Any questions, please?
There are no questions. Thank you for your testimony, Mr.
How do you not know that?
Because I have a thing here that they press to show me if they have questions.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Okay. Seeing no one. Public testimony is now closed. I understand that the sponsor has a motion. Mr. Croft.
I move to postpone assembly action on item 13 AO 21891 and AO 21891S until December 4th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any opposition to that motion?
Just a quick comment.
Yeah, Mr. Constant.
Just to respond to the question of where I was having dinner, and it took me a second to get here, and I think I'm within my rights to do that, Mr. Haberman.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Weddleton.
So why the postponement if the public hearing's closed?
Well, I'd committed at the work session where we sort of went over the basics of it that I would postpone it. I also wanted to have time to see if the developer could have some sort of specific agreement for this project. I reached out to the developer, and Mr. Schutte helped. The initial report I got back was that he wasn't interested in meeting at all. I'm hoping that we can talk him into it. But anyway, so it was both because I committed to do it and because of time for the developer to give us some feedback on what they thought it meant.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other discussion on Mr. Croft's motion? All right. If not, let's vote on the motion. Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee votes yes. That passes 10-0 and is postponed until December 4th. All right. Could I have a motion to change the order of the day, Mr. Croft?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to change the order of the day to take up 14O before 14A. So next.
And the reason for this is because Ms. Honest has a plane to catch, and we'd like to have her here to discuss this particular ordinance. Can I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Moved and
Mr. Chair.
seconded. Yes.
I was also going to ask that we change the order and take up 14H in advance of the public hearings on the budget, because the public hearings on the budget are going to go for a while, and I think the MLMP question isn't going to have a lot of people stacked up.
Okay, well, let's resolve this one first, and then we can have that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So any opposition to changing the order of the day? Okay, I ask for unanimous consent. Seeing and hearing no opposition, we will now take up item 14O, and actually I believe it's item 1401 on the addendum. 1 second.
That's the S version.
Yep, the S version. Ordinance number AO 2018-96S, an ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 10.80 to allow transfer of municipal marijuana establishment license similar to state marijuana license transfers. Assembly members Weddleton, Demboski, and Assembly Chair Dunbar. What is the will of the body? Oh, sorry. I'm a little bit out of practice here. Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to testify on this item? Anyone at all? All right, seeing none.
Eugene.
Come on down. You know the drill, Mr. Haberman.
Mr. Haberman, if you want to testify on every item, I'm going to ask you to sit up front, okay? Because we have a lot to get through tonight, and it's going to take some time.
Not to be the case. Please do not interfere with my rights.
All right, when it starts your...
Okay, let me get my clock going. Okay, I don't have the clock in front of me, but I'll have to trust you. I'll be brief on this matter, really brief. On the 14096, my name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I represent myself. I follow the public process. The public process is done appropriately. The decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. Yeah, I am correct. I can't help but notice, and I'll pick that up because my time is running short. I can't help but notice that there's an addendum to the agenda on this item, 2018-96S. Addendums were technically for dealing with Friday deadline. It's now laid on the table. In all fairness to the public and a reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard, if you're going to be doing addendums as late as Friday for an item for a public hearing tonight, and we're dealing with marijuana, okay, with all due respect, I strongly encourage you, and I told you I'd be brief, to continue public hearing and give a reasonable opportunity for the public to be heard. It's not reasonable to ask the public to review documents that are given as an addendum to the agenda as late as Friday for a public hearing tonight. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on this item. Mr. Weddleton.
Well, thanks. So we reviewed this at the Community Economic Development Committee twice and recommend approval. It is it's important to do this, and it's not really a huge impact. We have said that our licenses are not transferable, but in fact, because the people who own them could be completely changed over time, generally or administratively, we really were saying that the license is transferable. So we're just making it not only more clear, but in line with what the state is doing. And the main goals we've had with the previous regime where we said that the licenses weren't transferable was primarily so that we would continue to have, control over the license so we could pull it if we had a bad actor. We also didn't want a secondary market to form for the licenses, and we wanted to make sure that we knew who owned these licenses and could make sure that we didn't have criminals getting control of them. And all of that is retained with the changes we have here. So this makes us closer to what the state's doing, less complicated, and much clearer.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Are there any other questions? Anything you'd like to add, Ms. Honest? Ms. Honest is shaking her head no for Mr. Trainey's benefit. Any other comments or discussion on this ordinance? And I want to thank the members of the Community Economic Development Committee who worked on this, and I believe we received some feedback from the industry as well during that process, correct?
We did.
Yep. Okay. With that, I'm not seeing any further discussion. Please vote on this item. Mr. Trainey.
Yes.
That item passes 10-0. Okay, so Mr. Constant, you would ask that we take up 14H. I am a little bit hesitant, if only because I know there are a lot of people here to testify on the budget. Are there a number of people here to testify on the ML&P sale specifically? If there are, could you please raise your hands? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. In that case, then we can go ahead and take that up.
Thank you. So I'd move to change order and take up item 14H.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any opposition to that motion? This is the first public hearing. This is a very unique sale. We've decided to set 2 public hearings for this, as we do with the budget, because it is the most significant transaction in the history of the city. So, or at least the most expensive. All right, so let's see. I'll read it. First public hearing, ordinance number AO 2018-89, an ordinance authorizing the sale of substantially all assets of Municipal Light and Power to Chugach Electric Association Incorporated, and approving a 35-year power purchase agreement with option to purchase with Chugach Electric for power generated by the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project, Department of Law. Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? All right, your time has started now, Mr. Haberman. I told you, Mr. Haberman, if you're going to do this every time, please sit in the front. We have a lot of people that want to testify.
You're using my time up, thank you.
I am.
Yes, you are. Yep. You're out of order. And I was going to be brief anyway on this one.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I represent myself. I follow the public process. The public process is done appropriately. The decision made by the governing body is more like the public interest. What we have here on this item is first public hearing. I'd like to remind you of one thing. You had a meeting on this issue Friday between 1 and 2, okay, as Assembly members in City Hall. It was put on the table in agreement. But if my understanding, and I could be wrong, we all make mistakes. When you introduce for public hearing this item, okay, introduction, was that agreement available a few weeks ago? My concern is you're going and asking for public hearings on what? Very complicated issue that went to the voters, okay, in April. And now you got a public hearing where you didn't have the public see that agreement to when it was put on the table Friday. As I remind you, the more complex and complicated issue is, the more notice, the opportunity for the public to be heard. But look what's going on. I remind you when you did have an election for the people in this room, and as reference to this, there was a town hall meeting to deal with this issue, and sitting up there on stools was the mayor and a couple of other parties. Most of the people there were press. And the public was told in this meeting, before that vote, okay, a town hall meeting, you can only question and not comment. That's the setup of that happened here. But look what's going on here. How the interference of the public in my right to speak and give a fair chance, or anyone give a fair chance. But I don't accept this bullying, but I still remain my respect, because it's important to show the same respect I expect everyone else to show me. And that's why I continue to do it. So the public's not blind to your rudeness. But see, please stop. And also please recognize you can't pretend this is a public hearing, one, when all that information is not available to the public from the beginning. You've got to stop this situation. And also note, you need more hearings. Stop this. And the last thing is, when you allow the chair to say the hearing's closed, that chair is usurping your rights to have an objection to continue public hearing. Thank you very much. That ends my time, and with approximately 45 seconds to spare, even with the rudeness.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Please sit in the front if you'd like to testify, continue testifying. Ms. Domboski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this is a little unusual, but I would like to say it because I keep hearing this. And just under Robert's Rules of Order, Mr. Haberman, my rights as an assembly member are not usurped because he closes a public testimony. I have every right to make a motion to reopen the public testimony or to object to closing it, and I choose not to do that. So we are following the proper process, and Mr. Chair, I just want to support you as you make your motions and let you know that I understand how Robert's Rules work and our procedure, and if I have a problem with something you do, I promise you, you will know.
I believe you, Ms. Domboski. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Weddleton.
Just for listening public, Mr. Haberman holds a very high bar for us to cross, and he's often makes very, very good points, as he did today. And this is a huge issue for Anchorage selling MLMP, and it has been through many, many work sessions. It went through a vote, and there's information for there. Throughout the year, we've had a number of ordinances that dealt with this, with information provided. A great amount of detail is on the Assembly website, I believe. I haven't looked. I saw it listed there, but it's
also on poweranchorage.org.
Okay, so it's very much available, and we are also having 2 public hearings. So I believe we have met that bar Mr. Haberman has set for us, and we should, because this is a very important thing. And surprised at the lack of people here for the public hearing. I think the next one will be huge, huge.
I agree, Mr. Weddleton. I believe we have at least one more either work session or...
We have a committee meeting on the 15th and then a work session the following week, and then we have another public hearing. And we have already had 3 committee meetings, a work session. So, yes, we are ample on the public process.
And those meetings are open to the public.
Of course.
For everybody.
And noticed.
Thank you. Okay. Would anyone else like to testify on this item? Okay. Do I continue? I'm going to close the first public hearing, and we'll have another. So what?
When is the next one? Is that on the 4th, or is it? Oh, 4th. We're going to hold off till our last meeting in December. special meeting on the 30th.
Okay, I'm going to request a motion to combine the public hearings on budget items 14A through 14G for the convenience of public testimony. If anyone wants to testify on more than one budget item, let me know and we'll give you more time to do so. Could I have a motion to combine the public hearings on 14A through 14G?
Move to combine.
Second.
They're quick on the draw there, Mr. Croft. All right. Is there any objection to this motion to combine public hearings? Okay, seeing no objection, those public hearings are combined. All right, we will now taking up public hearing for items 14A, second public hearing on ordinance number AO 2018-85, 2019 general government operating budget. 14B, second public hearing on 2019 general government capital improvement budget. 14C, second public hearing on resolution number AR 2018-297, 2019 through 2024 general government capital improvement program. Item 14D, second public hearing on resolution number AR 2018-298. That's 2019 through 2024 six-year fiscal program. Item 14E, second public hearing on ordinance number AO 2018-87. That's the 2019 municipal utilities enterprise activities operating budgets. And item 14F, second public hearing on resolution number AR 2018-299. That's 2019 through 2024 municipal utilities enterprises activities capital improvement programs. And finally, item 14G, second public hearing on ordinance number AO 2018-88, 2019 operating and capital budgets of Anchorage Community Development Authority. So, public hearing is now open. To say this again, if there's any portion of the budget, the capital budget, the utilities budget, or the operating budget that you'd like to testify, please come down and do so now. You'll have 3 minutes on each item if you'd like to testify on multiple budgets. Go ahead. Please state your name for the record and where you're from, what part of town you're from.
My name is Russ Webb. I'm a homeowner and a resident in South.
Mr. Webb, could you pull it a little bit closer to you?
How's that?
Thank you.
As background, I've worked and volunteered in public service roles in our state for nearly half a century. I know there are some things only government can do. I believe there are some things only government should do. I have seen government at its best and worst. If I've learned nothing else in that time, I've learned that government must be efficient and effective, but more importantly, it must be responsive, transparent, and accountable to citizens. To be good, government must be all those things, and it must be based on facts, not individual philosophical perspectives of those working in government. When it comes to our approach for dealing with the illegal encampments in our community, our municipal government is none of these things. The Assembly must take the lead through the budget process in making changes required to impose good governance, and effective action regarding the illegal camps. The municipality's approach has failed. It doesn't merit the term strategy. The evidence of that failure is present every day. The more and larger camps are reestablished within days of cleanups. Fires burn daily in every camp, and crime is rampant in our neighborhoods and businesses near the camps. Mountains of garbage collect, used needles, human waste, they all pile up, and they start to reaccumulate immediately after a camp is moved, not removed. The municipality, frankly, has no plan or strategy to eliminate the illegal camps and the threats they pose. There is no plan even to mitigate those threats. Our current approach and actions are a series of ill-conceived, poorly executed half measures guided by philosophy and belief, not the facts on the ground. The approach is piecemeal and entirely reactionary. We intervene only intermittently and only during the summer. Nothing is done to prevent camps or remove them before they become entrenched. Municipal actions are ineffective, not responsible, do not protect the truly needy, and are almost entirely lacking in accountability. We merely manage the camps and campers while we wait for the development of permanent housing, which city officials believe will magically make all the camps disappear sometime in the next 20 years. The budget proposals that were presented by the mayor's staff at the October 24th Committee on Homelessness would only do more of the same with no better results and no better accountability. They would add permanent municipal staff and up to $2 million a year to the annual budget to address a problem the mayor believes should be declining as the development of permanent housing progresses. The Assembly should no longer cede its policy authority to the mayor. It should lead by rejecting the proposals that the mayor's staff put forward that Mr. Rivera has published as his own. If I can have
Thank you, Mr.
30 more seconds.
Yeah, please sum up in a sentence or two if you could. And I take this to be testimony on the operating budget.
On the operating budget, yes, sir.
If you have testimony to any of the other budgets, you can have 3 minutes
Okay.
for that.
We should apply a different approach. We should contract with a private entity to operate a comprehensive system for addressing the illegal camps. We've done that successfully for years with the Anchorage Safety Patrol and Safety Center. That's about a $2.16 million contract annually. It's much more complex and would be required to address the illegal encampments, both in terms of staff requirements and otherwise. It could be adjusted downward annually and stopped entirely without having municipal staff. All we really need in terms of municipal staff is someone to effectively manage a contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. There's one question from Mr. Croft.
No, I just wanted to make sure you had time to get that in. You've done so much work on this, but if you, anything else
I've
you want to
provided you earlier today testimony with some detailed information about all of this. I would hope you would all at some point read it. I commend you to do that. There's actual information in it. Thank you.
Thank you. So this gentleman was in line. If people would like to form a queue, that would be wonderful. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Mike Stumbaugh. I'm the president of IFF Local 1264, the Anchorage Firefighters Union. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the operating budget today and the proposed cuts to the Anchorage Fire Department. In my experience of over 21 years of being a civil servant in public safety, these types of cuts can prove to be very dangerous to the community. Closing a ladder truck and a water tender will increase response times dramatically and potentially be the difference between living and dying. I'm not overstating the importance of these specialized apparatus. When the citizens call 911 and the resource needed is not available, it will have real effects on their lives. A delay of 5 to 8 minutes for water can be the difference between saving a home or a life or not. A delay of 5 to 8 minutes on a car wreck can be the difference between getting that family out safely or not. A delay of 5 to 8 minutes can also be the difference between the men and women of the fire department getting to go home or not. In 2017, we renegotiated our contract and actually gave back a raise in 2018 so we wouldn't be here today. As far as I know, we are the only employees, whether in a union or not in a union, that did not get a raise this year. We also do not have a raise scheduled for 2020. That is 2 zeros in a 3-year contract. That is millions of dollars in payroll that the city will be enjoying this year and years to come. Local 1264 also softened staffing language to facilitate the opening of Medic 1 and Medic 82 in the downtown area. The members of my union voted to do this because we are not blind to fiscal realities. We also did this to help the citizens of Anchorage have one of the best fire and EMS departments in the entire country. We want to grow our services, not retract them, and we've been there to help out. Cutting over $2 million from the public safety has potential to be catastrophic, not only for my membership, but for the entire city and its residents. I urge you to look elsewhere for savings and not put our lives on the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stumbaugh. We have a question from Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for speaking tonight.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, we've been receiving a lot of emails with the same
That's good.
information, and so I'm just curious. if it's appropriate now to ask the administration to talk about what they think about the impacts of this cut or how to have that conversation. I don't know if it's during Mr. Sumbaugh's time or.
Well, I don't think this is an appropriate time to ask the administration questions necessarily. We're going to have an amendment work session where the administration will be able to speak to some of our proposed amendments, and I promise you there'll be one on this topic exactly. I think there probably will be several. But if you have any specific questions for Mr. Stumbaugh, now's a great time to ask them.
No, thanks for coming in.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn Davidson. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stumbaugh. There are no further questions. Thank you for your testimony.
My name is Stephanie Rhodes, and I live in the South Addition. And this is concerning the operating budget.
Would you pull the mic?
I'm not sure how much closer I can get it.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So the current budget proposals to address homelessness and encampments, you've heard, do not amount to a plan or a strategy. They basically propose more of the same seasonal camp and garbage removal, and they also propose to add a director of behavioral health as a permanent position to the Department of Health and Social Services, which actually has no behavioral health program to direct. The administration would do the same things it did last summer and add another permanent municipal employee with no direct bearing on camp abatements, and all this at a cost of $2 million annually. And it would appear to offer no greater result than we have today on our creeks and trails. There are three things required for effective action to eliminate illegal camps and the public safety and health risks they present. One would be a comprehensive year-round system of monitoring public spaces for illegal camps and responding. Second would be sufficient shelter beds so that all campers have an alternative to go to when their illegal camps are removed and until they can obtain housing first. And short-term storage of personal property. This has been done in other cities, and a model exists for doing so here, and that would be the Anchorage Safety Patrol Safety Center contract. You've already heard that spoken to, so I won't belabor the point. But that is a $2.16 million contract, and this kind of contracting could be done for far less and leave police, fire, and Parks and Recreation to do their primary functions instead of hazardous waste cleanup. Last year's budget funded the abatement and cleanup of over 300 camps and over 200 tons of trash. Efforts have now effectively ended for us. Tonight, the trails and parks are full again with encampments. Our shelters are full. Our overflow beds are full today. So what was done last summer did not work, and it was neither comprehensive nor strategic. The mayor does expect homeless and housing support providers to collaterally resolve the encampments through a housing first strategy. And I think the mayor believes that the city's hands are tied by homeless rights laws. We expect that the Coalition to End Homelessness will work hard to house the homeless, but it is not within their pillar of the Anchored Home Plan to attend to the health and safety risks of the camps and conscientiously abate them. The public health and safety pillar of the Anchored Home Plan is for the municipality to champion. Citizens do not share the mayor's reality avoidant assumptions. We know that camps will not magically disappear with a housing first strategy in place. And we do not share the mayor's apprehension over the civil rights of campers. We understand the legal issues. The municipality's encampments' hands are not tied by campers' constitutional rights. The law allows camp abatements with the provision of sleep alternatives, proper notice, and storage of property. The Anchored Home Plan will move forward housing first, but it is not moving forward encampments. In the meantime, your constituents want shelter for campers who are living in squalor, at risk of disease, and at risk of victimization by predatory campers. In the meantime, we want relief from daily thefts and other crimes committed by those same criminals who victimize the vulnerable and needy. In the meantime, we want safe parks for ourselves and our children, and our waterways to be free of human waste. The record's replete with what we ask, and we know it can be done, and
Thank you, Ms.
we would
Rhodes.
ask that you do it.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. We have a question from Mr. Weddleton.
Hi. So we've heard twice now that a contractor doing year-round abatement could do it for less than $2 million. Do you have something to back that up?
I know what Anchorage Safety Patrol does, and I know the level of service they provide, and I know what the competencies would be because you can delegate authority from your police, from your outreach workers, from your social workers who are, I think, employed by fire department, and by your Parks and Recreation people, all to a privatized workforce that does not need the competency level of those incredibly highly paid municipal employees. So I think this is something your procurement department could answer for you, but we did actually ask for that information from the municipality, how much it spends currently in police, fire, outreach, and parks and recreational response, and we were not given that information, so I can't answer it for you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. There are no further questions. Please.
My name's Wendy Moe, and this is the first time I've ever attended one of these assembly meetings. So I'm here to talk on the general budget, and I'm here to talk about Station 14 and eliminating the tender. I'm a new resident to Stuckagon Heights. I built a home with my husband and our 3 children. Last year, we've been up there a year so far. There are no fire hydrants or any accessible water in our neighborhood. The tender hauls 2,500 gallons of water, and a fire truck has 750 gallons of water. The fire truck can actually offload that 750 gallons of water in 3 minutes, which is, not very much time to try to put out a fire. I don't do well in settings.
It's okay, you're doing great.
Not only does the tender bring water, but they also have an EMT and a paramedic on that tender. There is no ambulance at Station 14. Station 14 also is the only tender that is north Anchorage, as well as serving Muldoon. Trailer parks do not have any accessible water that the fire department can tap into to help put out fires. Trailers go up immensely fast, so they need to have water sources for that. I've been a lifetime Alaskan. I've had to call 911 on 3 different occasions. One was for a fire when I lived in Spenard. I actually wasn't home when that happened. Station 5 was en route to an alarm call. When the 911 call came in, they had already seen the smoke at my house. They had already started proceeding to my house. It started on a back porch, it breached the roof, and it was getting ready to breach the house when they got there. I had 3 dogs in my house, and I left the door unlocked because of my dogs in the house in case of emergency. Somebody was able to get my dogs out, but when they went in, the smoke was this far from the ground. The fire department said that if they had not gotten there when they did, that the fire would have breached the house and it would have been a complete loss. 5 engines went to the house, and there's accessible water there. So that was a matter of minutes. There's only 1 road in to Stuckagon and 1 road out. And so if that access gets cut off because of a fire, we're in immense trouble. With regards to the paramedic and the EMT, the importance there is I had 2 home births, and I had 1 birth at a midwifery clinic. I had 2 retained placentas in different births. The first one I transported myself, or my ex-husband transported me to the hospital. The last birth that I gave, the EMTs had to come to the birth center and pick me up. I was bleeding profusely, and had they not gotten there, I would have lost my life. So, again, it takes 10 to 15 minutes to drive up Stuckagon to the end of the road, which is where I live. And, without those services nearby and available, it will be loss of life and property. It's not if, it will be. So, thank you.
There's one question from Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Hi, Ms. Moe. Actually, I just wanted to say thanks for coming. It can be really scary to speak in front of all these people, but it's really cool to see people come for the first time and share their thoughts. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moe. Appreciate your testimony. All right.
My name is Rick Kulberg, and I wanted to comment on the proposed elimination of the water tender at Station 14. I live in Basher Community, and Basher Community is surrounded by forest. It has the highest wildfire danger of any community in Anchorage. The beetle kill and windstorms that we've had in recent years have made the wildfire danger even worse. In fact, the community, or the forest around our community, is literally a cemetery of dead spruce waiting to be burned. The dry conditions that we experienced a few years ago could create a perfect storm for wildfire. And making matters worse, we have no fire hydrants in our community. When I tried to get home insurance through USAA, I was denied because of the wildfire danger in our location. Fires start small and get big. It's vital to have a first responder nearby to fight fires while they are still small. For that, we are dependent on the water tender at Station 14. Most fires around Anchorage are probably caused by human carelessness or in some cases by vandalism. The forest bordering the road up to Basher Community is a popular place for parties and transient campsites. It's only a matter of time before someone ignites a fire near the road. There's only one road into and out of Basher Community, and it passes through the forest of Bicentennial Park. A wildfire spreading along that road will block evacuation from the neighborhood. For the safety of Basher Community, we need a tanker truck nearby ready to respond. We can't wait for one to come from Eagle River. And for these reasons, the water tender at Station 14 should not be eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holberg. I don't see any questions. I appreciate your testimony. Okay. Thank you very much. Yep, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Assembly. My name is Linda Chase. I live in Rogers Park, and I'm part of a citizens coalition. I have lost confidence in Mayor Berkowitz and his administration. I don't believe that there is a genuine effort to do anything about the encampments all over our city. And I am here tonight to plead with each of you, to beg you to be a leader for our community and to do something about these encampments. We have presented several ideas tonight, especially about having a contractor deal with these encampments. And I, for one, am looking to each of you to do something for the citizens of this community. We are suffering. We're not in the parks anymore. I couldn't even take my dog in the parks. There are people here who have children who don't want to take their children into the parks. You folks can do something. If you notice, there's a number of us that are wearing these green signs that say budget for abatement. It is a major crisis in our community. And we ask that you consider, not that you just consider, we ask you to budget for abatement in a major way, not using community service. That can be a one-time, one person, can be two people. They don't have to do it if they don't want to. We suggest a contractor. And thank you very much. I hope that all of us who are here tonight wearing these or have it in our heart that we're looking to you to be leaders in our community. We don't have anybody else but you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chase. Go ahead, sir.
Evening. My name is Jesse Reeves. I live in Rogers Park. I'm at 2738 Ingress Street. You can always tell my house when you're at the stop sign. I live across the street from Walgreens. You can look in my backyard and see the tagging that they've done to my garage door over the years. I moved in early 2000s, and it was a great place to live. Now it's turned into something. The Greenbelt is the place I'm talking about. My garage door faces the alley and faces Walgreens. So the area is right there, the Greenbelt, who nobody claims. I call the state, I call the city, and I've talked to Mr. Rivera about it. He's actually come and visited. I call the ombudsman and ombudsman. But I'm in favor of this program that Mrs. Chase is spearheading. the area that I live in, I've had a few of the homeless people that were there. They've expired. We've had to call for the police and the 911, make 911 calls. And I just want to reiterate the fact that we need something done. Now, one of the things I'm going to suggest while I got a few minutes of time, people are talking about creating homes and all that kind of stuff. Why don't we look at alternate ways of doing this? I mean, I was overseas. We lived in Conex boxes. We lived in cargo trailers. We lived in ATCO trailers are out there. There's ATCO trailers all over the place that are empty that could be used. But if you take a cargo container and you build, and you can actually form a living structure out of it, why not take something like that and use it for these people that are out there on the streets? And by the way, most of the people that are on the streets, they have a place to live. They choose to be there. I've talked to lots of them, and there's people out there that have homes, they have family, they have everything. They just choose to be on the street. And I think it's time that somebody took it upon them, or got some cojones and took care of this and got these people into places where they need to be. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Hi, my name is Barbara Hansen. I'm at 23rd and Eagle Street in Anchorage near the Chester Creek Greenbelt. And bravo to the previous speakers. I'd like to reiterate the same things. I did send an email this morning to the Assembly members, and I hope you'll read the attachment to it that describes life in my neighborhood. It's probably within at the end of my street, 2 blocks from my home. There are probably 20 to 30 homeless camps concentrated there. And if you haven't walked through that area, 1 or 2 of you have with me, you'd be in for a shock. And I hope that any of you that haven't walked through that area will come, and I'd be happy to take you through the woods near my home. And I really hope you'll come and see it, because until you've seen it, you don't have an understanding of the war zone that we live in. And that's not an exaggeration. I have difficulty sleeping at night. It's gotten appreciably worse in the last 2 years. We have absolutely lost faith in the administration. The homelessness commissioner, person appointed to the commission, walked through the area with me a few weeks ago, saw all those homeless camps. It was appalling. Looked at me and told me that they're making great strides. Great strides. It's an insult to our intelligence. I can't believe that anyone could look at what is happening near my home and say that that's okay. You're failing the residents of this community badly. Just in 1 week recently, events that occurred in the same week included someone trying to hop over my back fence. My elderly neighbor made me aware that she chased them away during the day while I was at work. My neighbor had a young girl running down the street, falling down, screaming, being chased by 2 men that were, she said, armed from the homeless camps in the woods, chasing her down the street. She had to take her into her home to shelter her from that. She wouldn't call the police because she was afraid of repercussions. We have fires every morning in my subdivision. It's plastic and garbage fires that they're burning, and it hangs over our subdivision every morning. There's out-of-control propane fires in the evenings that threaten our homes. I took my dog for a walk the other night, and again she got into something, and I thought she was eating chicken bones that the neighbor leaves out in the yard, so I went to take it out of her mouth, and I ended up with a handful of human feces. I walked 1.5 blocks to my house before I could wash it off. Think about that. Imagine how that would affect your life on a daily basis. We have a crime problem. We also have a homelessness problem. They're different things. Give us some relief from our crime problem. It's illegal to camp in the woods. Give them a legal place to camp. If the Mimi really cared about homeless people, they'd provide running water for them. They'd provide sewer services for them. They'd give them shelter. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks for the opportunity to provide this testimony. I'm Nancy Boardman. I'm a 35-year resident of Alaska and a homeowner in Stuckagon Heights in East Anchorage. It's my understanding that the municipality has proposed eliminating or relocating Tender 14 and its operations as part of the proposed 2019 operations budget. I'm speaking today to urge you, our municipal assembly, to retain Tender 14 in its current location at Fire Station 14 for the following 3 reasons. As mentioned previously, there are no fire hydrants in Stuckagon Heights. On most of our roads, there are no street lights, and some are not paved, by the way. Station 14 is the fire department that responds to our neighborhood, and it's the only one, to my knowledge. There are also very few water sources available for prolonged firefighting of a structure fire in our neighborhood. We have to wait for another tender to respond from Eagle River or from South Anchorage if Tender 14 is eliminated. We are concerned that there may be a loss of life or a total loss of homes as a result of a fire. The Anchorage Fire Department currently has an ISO Class 1 rating. I think you're all familiar with what that means. It's important both for the municipalities, structures, and properties, as well as for individual homeowners. It helps to keep property insurance premiums at a reasonable level. We're proud of having this rating in the municipality. But at least 40% of the Class 1 rating comes from the grading of water supply. That's one of the most important things, as you know, in a structure fire. So I'm concerned that removing a tender or tanker from the area with no fire hydrants could jeopardize our Class 1 rating. In addition, the ISO Class 1 rating requires that 4 firefighters respond to a structure fire. If the tender is relocated or eliminated, I'm concerned that it will reduce the number of firefighters available to fight a structure fire in East Anchorage out of Fire Station 14. And this is not just a Stuckagon Heights issue. This covers all of Muldoon and all of East Anchorage. We pay significant property taxes in Stuckagon. My priority as a taxpayer is to see my property taxes go to the protection of property. That means, number 1, fire protection. Secondly, law enforcement. And thirdly, roads and infrastructure. Now, I know that we have many, many other things to pay via property taxes. But when fire protection is the least prioritized, that concerns me. It concerns me that it's coming out of my property tax budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks for the opportunity to testify. My name is Don Crafts. I'm the president of Basher Community Council.
Don, could you move the... Thank you very much.
Can people hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
So I just wanted to not repeat everything that's been said, although I believe in everything that's been said previously on this. I do want to mention that I've received in the order of about 50 emails and maybe 50 phone calls, and unanimously all are against the elimination of Tender 14 for all the reasons you've heard. So like I said, I don't want to repeat it. But I should mention, I've also talked to Station 14 firefighters that all want to remain nameless, but they've indicated to me that with a single entrance into Stuckagon, they have a save lives policy and let the houses go if a fire gets out of control. It's that bad, even with all the equipment they already have, if it gets out of control. So they already know with that tender they could lose the neighborhood and just be rescuing lives and not trying to save any dwellings. So appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crafts.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Greer. I'm in the Hillcrest-Spenard area, Spillcrest. I'm here to talk about the operating budget, and I appreciate the efforts of the Coalition in Homelessness. I think we all realize we're not going to end it, but if we can make it better, I think that's everybody's goal, is to reduce it. I'm all in favor of temporary housing, reduced, working on budgets for that. I don't think just removing the homeless camps is going to solve it. I think most of us know that. We have to have mitigation plans. Putting that money towards a budget that will give at least a good majority of the people a safe place to go. I think my neighbor mentioned it. The safety of these people is important too. A lot of them are there for many reasons. We all know that. It's not a one fix. If we could have, tent camps, maybe a person can pay $50 a month. At least they'll get. You're not going to get everybody there. There's going to be people that can't. Works for military. They can live out in the tent camps. The other someone else mentioned is, can't these be set up? It's not going to be that nice, but it's better than camping in the woods. Maybe another alternative in terms of subsidized roommates for people who can take on people who need help out there, who's got an extra room in their house or two. Again, we can't solve it, but just removing the homeless camps is not enough. And I look toward the city and your wise judgment and the coalition to do what you can to make this better. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Deanna James, and I'm a South Addition Community Council member, and I am here to talk about the encampments and whatever we can do. To be honest with you, I appreciate Ms. Greer giving some solutions. I tend to be more solution-minded than just a problem maker. I'm a teacher. I'm a community member. I've been born and raised here. My husband is fifth generation here as well. He used to play in our neighborhood parks. Some of you may have done that with him. But the tough part I have now is our kids can't do that. It's disgusting. I can no longer, as a teacher at Central Middle School of Science, take my kids down to Valley of the Moon because it's too dangerous. I used to, when I was at Begich, walk to Rogers Park or to Russian Jack, and we would do, we would look for different spaces. We would run through the woods, and we would just tell them, hey, watch out, there are a few people out here. This is their home. And the kids understood that. We can't do that anymore. So our kids are losing out academically. They're losing out as just children in their own neighborhoods. I've had not only 2 bikes stolen off the back of my house, because I have a 1952 house, doesn't have a garage. They're chained up. I've also had a deck box completely emptied. I mean, we're talking a deck box as big as this table, and it's gone. Somebody's sleeping really well. It's not okay. We have to do something, and don't placate me anymore on the news with stories that in 3 days it's going to be gone, and we're going to put them into the connexes, because I thought that was a great idea. And the people that are in the Homeless Coalition can walk in there and they can actually help these people, okay, and give them some services and at least get that to them. Don't placate me anymore, because it's not working, because I don't see it. I called 2 months ago on the place on Hillcrest. My daughter walks that hill every day to West High School. The kids are seeing it. They're running it. There's now a grill there. My 6th grader noticed it because the trees are gone bare. It has been more than 3 days. Please don't tell me that we're doing stuff, but then don't do it. I've grown up here on the south side, but went to church every morning on Sunday mornings, and I poured coffee. I knew every person who lived on the streets. I knew them by name. My family continues to do that. We support people. We want to help, but we're not. Somewhere there's a breakdown. We need you to step up and help us, because we're talking it. We need help, and there needs to be some action. If we say we're going to do it, let's do it. We're failing everybody, and it's not safe for my kids. I'm not happy. Somebody will get hurt. People are. Just because they don't have a home does not mean that they're not getting hurt. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, Assembly. My name is Pat Corchina, and I live in Rogers Park. And as what has been said by the previous people about this situation, I I've also been here before about in a commercial situation down at Fairview, and I understand this homeless issue, and I don't know if it makes any difference, but the term homeless, when you go to these camps, you see that most of them, there's issues. There's either mental health issues, there's inebriate problems, or drug problems, and they get classified as homeless because there's a certain segment of the people that have unusual circumstances and they're out in the street. But my point is that most of these camps, though, they're almost like a haven for collecting. Everything along Chester Creek, I've gone into some of these camps, and they're mostly 20, 30 bicycles, propane tanks that they've taken off of some of those porches. There's, there's no, obviously, the public health facilities, and they're dangerous. And they're right next to the stream bed. Kids are playing there right on the bike trails, and it just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I have grandkids now, and I wouldn't probably take them down there to let them go, because 20 years ago, it was, Chester Creek was a main thoroughfare for the public, and it isn't being used that way anymore. And frankly, I think about a contractor getting a contract that's their job to go down there and deal with that. And then when they are taken out of there has to be another system of where they go. And that's your job. I don't know where else, to put that. But basically, having them illegally camp and cause danger in the neighborhood has to have some more, solutions than just push them to another camp again. So hopefully we can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Ahrens. I am a resident of Stuckagon Heights. And I'd just like to ask Ms. Dombowski, last month there were 21 runs for Tender 14. How would you explain to your residents in Eagle River that their tender's not available because it's in Anchorage, tending to a Muldoon trailer fire? 21 runs. I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said about the number of gallons of water and all those things. But on Campbell Airstrip last summer, we had a problem with motorhomes. These are people, this is their home. They were parking on that road. They were camping in the woods. We watch from above. We look for smoke. We call the fire department. Without a tender to put out the fires along that road or the camps behind Lake Otis and Tudor by Campbell Campbell Lake Park, that's a city park. That's another place our tender is very important to us. If there's a road accident on the Seward Highway, Tender 14 is there. It's the closest one. Without Tender 14, DeArmond is not our first response, is what I've been told by firefighters. They said it's Eagle River. So who's going to double back on Eagle River? DeArmond? Taking away Tender 14 is an awful idea. I don't know who thought it was a good idea, but East Anchorage matters. We do. And having so many tenders on the south end of town, yes, you need to tend along the Seward Highway and the neighborhoods there too, but there's way more people packed in tightly without running water on hydrants. Hydrants freeze. You could probably get information from AWWU about hydrants in the winter that are frozen or iced up or haven't been dug out. There's a lot of reasons why Tender 14 in technically midtown East Anchorage is really important.
Thank you, ma'am. There is one question for you from Ms. Dombowski.
Thank you, and it's more of a comment. I want to tell you, you're preaching to the choir. During the work session, I think I was the one member who grilled the fire chief for a good 5 minutes on the use of apparatus and resources. And to answer your question, Eagle River, we do have a tender out there. Our response times from Anchorage in the winter, it could be 20, 30 minutes before they help us. Mm-hmm. We do have the Chugach Volunteer Fire Department when available. Sometimes they serve Eagle River or they'll help. But I'm with you. Listen, there's a reason you have fire apparatus, especially in more rural areas. It's because the help is so far away. And, if you're going to burn down a house, 5 minutes makes a huge difference. So I'm hearing you, I'm listening to you, and frankly, I'm on your side. So
I appreciate that, because even having that green light apparatus that makes all the lights turn green, if any of you have been on Tudor Road between 7:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 and 6 o'clock at night, green lights don't matter. Seward Highway, traffic, green lights don't matter. A fire truck's not going to get there. Someone's going to die.
Thank you, ma'am. There are no further questions.
Hi, my name is Kelly Hurd, and I live on 521 West 20th Avenue, and I'd like to add my name to publicly state my support for advocacy in increasing the budget to deal with the homelessness issue and to also deal with the abatements of the camps. Just to reiterate a lot of the testimony that's already been said is that we have seen our community dramatically change over the course of the last couple of years. There's a sense of unease in our community. There's a sense of unease along all of our neighborhoods in the Chester Creek area. Our community council conversations are totally dominated by this discussion. We've seen crime dramatically increase. It's brazen crime also. My partner works from home. A couple of weeks ago, right during the daytime, somebody tried to break into the house. Our neighbor, within an hour, broad daylight, somebody tried to break into the car, trying to break into her car. The parks aren't safe. I would never go to the Valley Moon or the park at all. I live very close to there, but I don't go there in the evenings like I used to, or just walk my dog. There's trash. So again, we've seen a dramatic change in the quality of our lives, and we are asking for your leadership and to make this the highest priority and make our community a community we can be proud of and feel safe. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
My name is Russ Reno. I own Anchorage Downtown Tour Group, 527 West 3rd Avenue. And I'd like to speak up on the money that's being spent towards getting our homeless under control, or the way we think that they should be under control. And I would like to challenge you to, before you allocate any more money, for things to be done to get better housing, things like that. Take into consideration that we spent a lot of money already on these feasibility studies and bringing people up from Seattle to tell us how they failed in Seattle and so forth. And we've really done nothing to find out who are the people that are affecting us in our individual, around our individual homes in our different areas of downtown. And what I mean by that is that how many people are being turned away from these homeless shelters because they're through no fault of the people who are running the shelters, but through their own actions, whether they're intoxicated, whether they are unruly, whether they are someone they know that is a high risk for violence and things like that. And I think before we spend any more money on these feasibility studies, we need to find out exactly who are the people that are affecting us? Who are the people that are affecting downtown Anchorage as well as the other parts of the city? And I've been told that we're not even allowed to get their names or find out. There's no kind of, well, you can look at my name on the line to find out that I own my business, and you can solicit me in my business and find out that's all public information. So why can't we find out who these people are that keep getting turned away? Because in my theory is that those are the same people that are causing the major problems that we have downtown Anchorage and in other areas of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Robert Moore. I live in Campbell Park. Just dropped my pen. Campbell Park neighborhood. I'm here to address the homeless issue and the budget constraints. What we're doing right now is not working. I can take you to at least 20 different homeless camps within a half-mile radius of Dick Traney's house. It's that bad. We have turned our parks into waste dumps, biohazard waste dumps. Lady over here was just talking about her dog that picked up human waste and had to take it out of its mouth with her hand. She had to walk, I don't remember how many blocks. We have three groups. We have those who really need and want the help. We've got those with behavioral health issues, and we have those that choose that lifestyle. I've actually employed homeless people
sweep up, doing minor work around construction sites, and they really just want enough to make enough money to continue that lifestyle. Those are the ones we regrettably we can't help. That's a choice that they're making. Yes, we need to help the first two groups, the behavioral health, the people that are down on their luck or that actually need and want it. The third group, there's not a whole lot we can do. Do you really want your children playing in human waste and discarded hypodermic needles? It's that bad. I'm in the park daily. I have dogs and I walk them all the time. Our parks are waste dumps. We need, and I've cleaned up homeless camps. I've actually gone out and done it myself. Rakes, shovels, rubber gloves, thick boots, just to get the stuff out. I volunteered to do that. Neighbor and I have done that a couple different times. The problem is, once these camps are cleaned up, they move right back in. They live in a camp until it becomes so foul they can't stand it, and they move to a different spot. If we just clean the camps up, we're just making an open area for them to move back in. We need a different plan. We need, one, to get our camps cleaned up, but we need to have somewhere for them to go, whether it's a campground, whether we build concrete barracks with high-pressure hoses that we can wash down, but we need something else. We can't just clean up the camp because we're just cleaning up a spot for them to move into next. So we need a plan for that. Each one of us that chooses to have a blind eye to this, or that chooses to enable them to moving into camps and living that lifestyle, we're all guilty of it. If we don't do something to change this, then we are enabling them and we're allowing them to do it. I would suggest that maybe one thing that we can do, if a private home or a business is such a foul biohazard place, it gets closed down, it gets condemned. Maybe we should condemn and shut down the city until we get this problem fixed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, hold on.
Yep.
Question, sir. I do have a question for you. I'm just curious if you have any understanding, Mr. Chair, thank you, of how long it takes to clean up a site that, not a camp, but a property in your neighborhood where someone has got trash everywhere and cars. Do you know how long that process takes?
Actually, I do. I've been through a couple of neighborhoods. There's a house in my neighborhood right now, and there's another one that's in Dick Traney's neighborhood right now. And
What's
I do
the
have an
timeline
idea of
on
how
one
long
of those?
it takes.
How long? What do you just put it out there for the public?
To whose standard do you want it cleaned up to? Have all this stuff removed?
I mean,
that takes weeks.
Yeah,
It
no, it
takes
actually
weeks.
takes 6 months to a year for us to get the right to go onto private property and seize that property to clean it up.
Okay.
It takes a very long time. So, okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Any
Constant.
other questions?
There are no further questions, sir. Thank you for your
Okay, thank you.
testimony.
Hello, my name is Chris Mann, and I'm here to talk about, just say a few words more about the proposed elimination of the water tender at Station 14. I've lived up in the Stuckagin Heights area for 35 years. I've actually lived in Alaska for almost 42 years. And when I first moved up to Stuckagin, there were relatively few houses up there. Now there are quite a number of houses up there. As you've heard, we have no fire hydrants. Some people have made accommodation to store water on their property in roof, sort of additional roof type, under roof structures. But we have a dire situation if there is a fire in the area. We have Bicentennial Park below us. We have the Chugach State Forest above us and all around us. And the thing I really want to emphasize is the fact that we have only one road The same road takes us in as takes us out of the neighborhood. It takes about 15 minutes to get into the neighborhood from Tudor Road. And the fire station, as you know, is just above Tudor Road. And so we're not just talking about the loss of property, the loss of houses. We're talking about the potential, the high potential, if there is a fire, of loss of life, because there is only one way in and out. So I urge that the water tender at Station 14 not be eliminated. I would like to say one more thing about the homelessness. I didn't come prepared to talk about the homelessness, or I would have done a bit more research. But the other night on a public radio station, I heard them talking about how they've dealt with the homeless situation. I believe it is in Minneapolis. And I would recommend that the city look into that if they don't already know about it. And again, I don't have my facts because I didn't even anticipate talking about this tonight. But I believe they have set up something similar to a tent city for the homeless. And I know that right now there is this is a different issue, so could I have just a minute more?
Well, you know what? Let me ask you a question then. Can you tell us more about the tent city in Minneapolis?
Sorry?
Tell us what they're doing in Minneapolis, please.
Okay, I was wondering, from what I understood, they really have created a neighborhood for the homeless. And when I look at how the homeless gather in the city, they gather in groups. They have a community spirit to them. And I wonder if thought has been given to something that may sound outlandish right now, but the site of the old Alaska Native Hospital downtown, whether or not consideration might be given to creating a tent city, but a tent city with facilities as well, such as public shower and bathrooms for the individuals, perhaps a store on the site where they could go and get snacks and drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, but a community, establishing a community for them so that you wouldn't have these camps throughout the city that endanger the residents who live near those camps.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your testimony on both issues. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm hard of hearing.
There are no further questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
For the record, I will be only needing 180 seconds instead of all the hearings that you have combined, so you know the clock.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. Haber. Are you saying you need 3 minutes?
No. Yeah, all I need is 3 minutes because you have combined hearings, and for the record, that's all I'm going to be taking.
Okay, are you speaking on the operating budget or the capital budget?
When I'm speaking, could be speaking all together as one.
Great,
so,
thank you, Mr. Haber.
Okay, but I wanted to note it from the beginning so it's clear. I'm not coming back to say I need more time. Okay?
Thank you.
Let me start. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I live in the Madison Valley. I follow the public process. The public process is done appropriately. The decision made by the governing body is more like the public interest. I'm on topic, but I want to address to you what you might be not thinking about, because, as you know, I attend a lot of meetings. Tonight, you're dealing with a public hearing on your budget. Are you considering at this time the situation when you approve a budget, how the impact will be is what state funding are you going to be receiving? What federal funding are you going to be receiving? Are you going to have to go back after a state legislature situation and they say, we're not going to give you that revenue sharing or whatever, or the feds, and the end result, you're going to have to go back to your budget that you approved by the December 31st and say we need to do an amendment to the budget and to take this out or do whatever to make sure everything is balanced. Why I bring that issue is to you, your budget season is December 31st. That's when you have to approve for January 1st. In the Matsu Borough, there is a situation where they have to approve their budget that starts July 1. And I've seen the situations out there where the legislature, the governor, whatever, there's vetoes, and all of a sudden everything's panicky out there, and they got to go back and have special meetings and revise. And it also involves with, when they have to deal with it, they also have to deal with the school district. Okay, they have a budget, but if the assembly there has to approve their budget, and then they have to work it, if it doesn't meet the budget they expected, the monies they're going to get, then the school board there has to go back and say, you're not going to get as much money as you thought, you're going to have to do some revisions. So what we have here is a situation in the state, it's gone on for several years, where there's been several $1 billion each year with monies we're spending more than what we got out of the savings account. So as you plan to figure out your budget and be fair and sensible, you've got to be realistic that the state's not realistic in how they're spending their money, and you cannot plan to what the state's going to do. So you need to plan now and not have to go back and change things to affect everyone in the community. So that is in one part of my statement, and then with this thing. As I said before, the more complex and complicated an issue is, the more notice, the more opportunity the public to be heard. What we have here is a budget. 2 public hearings. The borough does 3 public hearings. You should have 3. But I'd like to add a footnote to the situation. As you know, I attended your intensive sessions at City Hall with administration presenting their budget, going through many times, and I don't recall anyone from the public there. But I'm concerned by this, and I'm telling you this. You need these meetings here. Look what that would have meant for the public and the press. You had the meeting here on a video audio, and the public can go back and heard the presentations dealing with this budget. But the public is blinded except for maybe an audio, and we won't know who exactly is speaking. And as I promised, my time is up. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. There are no questions. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Morrison, and I live on 23rd Avenue. And I, too, would like to talk about the homeless issue. In the last couple years, we have installed security cameras. We have installed locking padlocks on our gates. We have a locking mailbox now. We have put everything and anything that is out in our shed that's locked up. You can't do anything anymore. We have a neighborhood kind of watch that if you see something, say something, call your neighbor. We've had 5 vehicles stolen. We've had numerous mail stolen. A couple houses broken into. The camps in the back with the fires. One was right behind our house in April. It was huge. Took 2 fire trucks to put it out. I've lived in this same house for 22 years, and the last 18 months have been awful. I also work at North Star Elementary, and this year we've had at least 2, if not 3, lockdown stay-puts because of homeless people coming onto the school grounds and behaving inappropriately. And the school district decided to lock our back gate that goes down into the stairs into the neighborhood. So there's a fence up so nobody can come up and go through. The neighbors can't, and Stellar students can't, our kids can't. We are dealing with the issue of getting a school bus down into our neighborhood stop so our kids can actually ride the bus to school instead of walking down Arctic Hill. It's just gotten really, really bad. The breaking point, I think, for the school district was about a month and a half ago was there was a homeless camp set up right by the stairs in the back of our school. So I, too, advocate for putting more money into the budget to do something about this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else like to speak on any of the budgets? Anyone at all? All right. Oh, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Jody Seitz, and I'm here because I do care about the homeless situation. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I regularly walk the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail, and I have also walked along the Chester Creek Trail, and even after a large cleanup, you'll see tents popping up just right away. What I wanted to share with you is, at some point, when you look on the next door neighborhood emails and the exchanges that take place, sometimes the conversation gets alarming because people are so upset. And friends of mine have had things stolen, et cetera. And I have stopped walking on these trails around town by myself, even though I always carry pepper spray and stuff like that. But I just don't feel comfortable. And, you know, there's a little part of me that as a homeowner is slightly outraged that people are living in our forests and basically they need public services, but they're not going to pay for them. And they are, for some reason, we don't all know what they are, you know, they just want to live like that. So I've heard some suggestions tonight I thought were really good. For example, the idea of a tent camp, maybe it's wall tents, maybe it's ATCO trailers, but someplace where you can provide toilets and you know, a hot dish if possible, and at least services so that people who really need them can get them. But the other observation, finally, that I want to say is that I'm worried about vigilantism sort of cropping up because I don't believe the homeless are responsible for all the crimes in town, but it would be easy for them to be targets. And it's not, it's a very bad atmosphere. We literally have trails where the haves walk past the have-nots every day. This is a terrible thing. Our community is becoming really divided, and it's a visible, identifiable thing. And so I wanted to just say thanks to all the folks who testified and support the idea of the city providing trail monitors as a useful, really helpful way to discourage people being, you know, attacked or some kind of weird thing. And I've never been attacked. I've never been even approached by somebody that I suspected was homeless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your testimony. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'll be quick. My name is Lois Kendrick, and I live in Valley of the Moon area. I also work in Spenard. I've lived in our neighborhood since 1999, and the situation that's just occurred and has been occurring for the last couple of years has been really disturbing and disappointing. What I hear from all my friends and everyone that has spoken this evening, what I'm hearing is that we are all trying really hard, and we're all on Nextdoor. We all communicate with each other. We do what we're supposed to do, and I feel like we're being let down because we're not being shown that same respect and that same effort from just from who we turn to, the assembly, the administration. I have never really been afraid to be in my neighborhood. Never have been. When we bought our house, we bought 5 houses down from where I had rented. And the other night, Thursday night, 9:15 at night, 2 gunshots. First thing I do, I go to Nextdoor. Anyone hear the gunshots? Yes, 19th and Spenard Hill. You know, another one, I think it's 20th and Arctic, 11 o'clock, 3 more shots. My husband likes to run at night. I don't want him to run anymore on the trails. I don't want our dog to go out. And Anchorage has never been like this. I mean, yes, we have our issues, but, you know, I love this city, and I was born and raised in Palmer. You know, I'm an Alaskan, and it just makes me very sad that we've gotten to this point, and I want people to have good lives. I want the homeless to be taken care of, and part of taking care of the city is for all of us to be taken care of. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Would anyone else like to testify on the budget? Anyone at all? All right, seeing no one, public testimony is now closed. And I think we're not going to take action. Okay, we're not going to take action tonight. Do we need a further motion, or just continue to the 20th automatically? Not continued, but postponed.
The assembly action is continued until the 20th.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we move on and everyone leaves, there will be one more public hearing on the budget for the public to come back, or is this it?
No, there will not be another public hearing. We will have another meeting where we take action, and there will be a work session between.
Okay.
If you feel like you wanted to testify and didn't get a chance, you can send us an email, and I promise you we do read them. And so it's another good way to communicate, and that can go all the way up until the 20th is when we plan to take action on the budget. Thank you very much for coming tonight. So now we are down to item.
Forrest, this is.
Yes, Mr. Trainee.
Close all the public hearings on all the budget items.
Say again?
You closed the public hearing on all the budget items.
Yes, they were combined.
Okay. Because in the past, we've closed each one individually.
We had a motion to combine at the beginning of the discussion, so we just needed one motion to close them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. We are now on item 14I, ordinance number AO 2019-93, an ordinance in the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to eliminate the allocation between services and capital improvements in the Eagle River Chugiak Parks and Recreation Service Area Mill Levy under Anchorage Municipal Code Section 27.30.090 with no change to the voter-approved not to exceed mill rate of 1.00, Office of Management and Budget. Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Weddleton.
Well, I just want to hear from Ms. Domboski. This is all right with your area? And
Yeah, so effectively, we're not changing the upper mill rate. This is just so the Parks and Rec Department out in Eagle River and the board can manage keeping up with the projects that they need to keep up with. I don't know, Mr. Rod is here if you have more questions, but I talked to him about it previously, and there's no opposition from the Parks and Rec Board of Supervisors.
okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other any other discussion on this item? Okay, please vote on this item. Mr. Croft, how do you vote? Mr. Trainee, how do you vote? Mr. Trainee votes yes. Mr. Croft? Yes. Mr. Croft votes yes. That item passes 10-0. We are now on item. I'm sorry, I lost my. Here we are. We're now on item 14J, ordinance number AO 2018-94, an ordinance authorizing disposal of real property legally described as Lot 1, Block 41A, Plateau Heights Subdivision, Plat C 54, Real Estate Department. Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, please vote on that item. Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee votes yes. Mr. Constant? Mr. Constant votes yes. That item passes 10-0. We are now on item 14K, ordinance number AO 2018-95, an ordinance authorizing the disposal by competitive bid of real property legally described as Tract B-1, Block 3, Alderwood Subdivision, number 1, Real Estate Department. Yeah. Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any, please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee votes yes. That item passes 10-0. We are now on item 14L, resolution number AR 2018-317, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $242,480.52, a transfer of responsibility agreement grant from the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities to the Anchorage Bowl Parks and Recreation Service Area CIP Grant Fund, all within the Parks and Recreation Department for funding the Chugach Foothills Connector Phase 2 project, Parks and Recreation Department. Public testimony is now open. Does anyone wish to testify on this excellent project? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I would just like to reiterate how much I love this project, and I thank everyone who's involved in keeping it going forward. It's a very popular project in my district. Okay, please vote. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
Mr. Trainee wisely votes yes. That passes 10-0. We are now on item 14M, resolution number AR 2018-318, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating when tendered $118,125 of an Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority grant from the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities and appropriating $32,129 as a contribution from the 2018 operating budget area-wide general fund, all to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund for providing anchorized transportation service, all within the Public Transportation Department. Public testimony is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing none, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee. Mr. Trainee?
Yes.
Mr. Trainee votes yes. That item passes 10-0. We are now on item 14N, resolution number AR 2018-319, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating when tendered $110,120 of an Alaska Community Transit reimbursable grant from the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. I don't think I can because I got to get to the end. And appropriating $2,422 as a contribution from the area-wide general fund, all to the State Direct Federal Pass-Through Grants Fund to be used as match to the Federal Transit Administration and/or Alaska Mental Health Trust grants for transit service and preventative maintenance. Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing none, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
You can do the next couple. I have to read the bolded portion. So that would be nice. But these next couple you could do that for. That passes 10-0. Yes. We are now on item 14P because we already did 14O and we passed the S version. We are on 14P, resolution number AR 2018-321, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest regarding the transfer of ownership for restaurant eating place liquor license number 4123 with restaurant designation permit for Ding Hao, LLC, doing business as Ding Hao Mongolian Barbecue.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Okay, good. Public hearing is now open. So anyone wish to comment on this fine East Anchorage establishment, which me and Pete Peterson definitely go to frequently?
They got great sweet and sour pork.
Yeah, it's all you can eat. Okay, Mr. Haberman, I brought that upon myself.
I'll be very brief. Can you use the timer while I write this down so I don't go off words? Okay. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I represent myself. I follow the public process. The public process done appropriately. The decision made by the governing body is more like in the public interest. I guess by what the chair had said, just for me coming up here, knows that perhaps, but no one never assume anything, that maybe you said something that is not appropriate. And what I'm getting at is this. In this particular public hearing, which you just introduced, you cannot use words to prejudice the proceedings. And that means fine establishment or whatever, bad establishment, whatever. You need to be neutral. And what I witnessed, this one and the one on item L, was prejudice. And you need to open the public hearings. And what you've done on this one was prejudice before you had the public hearing. And that's all I have to say. It needs to stop. And I'm sad to say that it happened twice in these meetings, in this one, and the Assembly was silent. But as you know, I'm not silent. Thank you very much, and please stop this.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Mr. Constant.
Mr. Chair, yeah,
Okay.
just for the record, Ms. Demboski did in fact point out that it sounds like the chair was biased, and so I think the record would accurately reflect, if you listen to it, that the member did call it out, and I think we're good because of that. Thank you.
I did not hear that. The public denied I did not hear that.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. Your testimony is concluded. Okay. Good to know. Any other public testimony? Okay. Seeing none, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Constant.
Fine establishment.
Thank you. Excellent establishment. Okay. Please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. That passes 10-0. We are now on item 14Q, resolution number AR 2018-322, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest regarding the transfer of ownership for restaurant eating place liquor license number 4529 with restaurant designation permit for Samurai Sushi LLC, doing business as Samurai Sushi, also located in Muldoon. Public testimony is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing none?
Move to approve.
Second.
Oh, okay. Public testimony is now closed. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'd like to state for the record, this is also a fine establishment in Muldoon. We've got good food in Muldoon. Okay. Mr. Weddleton.
Do you ever eat at home?
What's that?
Do you ever eat at home?
I like to go out, actually. It's one of the things that I enjoy, especially when my parents are in town. Mr. Constant.
Mr. Peterson just admitted on the record he does not eat sushi, which is, I have to judge him for that.
Y'all got to live a little. Okay. Okay, let's vote on this item. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
Okay. That item passes 10-0. We are now at item 14R, resolution number AR 2018-323, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest regarding the transfer of ownership and location of beverage dispensary license, liquor license number 4694 with restaurant designation permit for Film On Productions, LLC, doing business as Beartooth Theater Pub. Thank you. Public hearing is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing none, public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve. Oh, you got me.
Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Ms. Demboski. Discussion on Beartooth. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, I just want to speak to the fact that this establishment, these two gentlemen and their family of businesses have made a huge contribution to the revitalization of Spenard, and in fact, the vitalization of Anchorage in general. And at some point, we ought to recognize them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Anyone else wish to speak on Beartooth Theater Pub? And we have another one coming up. All right. Seeing none, please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Trainee votes yes, and that passes 10-0. We are now at item 14S, resolution number AR 2018-324, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its protest regarding the new beverage dispensary duplicate liquor license number 5721 with restaurant designation permit for Film On Productions, LLC, doing business as Beartooth Grill.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public testimony is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? All right. Seeing none. Public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Mr. Rivera. Any discussion on the Beartooth? Okay. Seeing none, please vote. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
All right. And much to our community's pleasure, that passes 10-0. All right, we are now on item 14T, resolution number AR 2018-326, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly stating its non-objection to the transfer of State of Alaska marijuana license number 10747 for Great Northern Cannabis Incorporated. Ms. Taft is not with us. Doing business as Great Northern Cannabis. Public testimony is now open. Does anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing none, that Public testimony is now closed. What is the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Weddleton.
You know, I just wanted, for our listening audience, we talked about changes to allow license transfers within Anchorage, and this is just saying we're not going to protest one by the state, which is totally different from ours. We still have one on this that we still have control of.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. And this was also discussed, I believe, in the CED committee, correct?
Right.
Yes. Wonderful. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, please vote on this item. Mr. Trainee.
Yes.
Mr. Croft.
Yes.
Mr. Croft votes yes.
I get it.
That passes 10-0.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. And that concludes our agenda, our regular agenda. I think that was the first night we've ever had, I don't think we had a single no vote that night, which is interesting. Okay, special orders, there are none. Reserved, there's nothing? Yeah. There'll be plenty of opportunities for you to vote no in the future, Ms. Domboski, believe me. We are on audience participation. Would anyone like to testify on anything we did not discuss tonight?
Anyone at all?
My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I live in the Madison Valley. I follow the public process. The public process is done appropriately. Decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. I'm going to be talking about an issue that was not discussed here.
Mr. Haberman, could you talk into the microphone, please?
Okay, can I start over because it looks like someone wasn't able to hear?
Sure.
Okay, I'll start my clock. Is this better?
Yes.
Oh, okay, up. Okay, I see what happened. Thank you very much. My name is Eugene Carl Haberman. I represent myself. I live in the Madison Valley. The public process done appropriately. Decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. Thank you, Assemblyman Constant, very much for that. I'm going to be talking about an issue that wasn't discussed here tonight, but I'm surprised it wasn't mentioned at all. Some of you know who I am and what I do, and where I came back in the picture is dealing with elections. Now, I was stunned, but then I'm not surprised. Yesterday in the news, while the election was going on, there was a situation affecting residents in Anchorage where they tried to vote, and they found out that it's reported, but that I didn't witness it, but it's not been said it didn't happen, but it's been on news by people said it did happen to them, that they tried to vote, and there was the workers didn't bring the ballots in the beginning and affected the election. Now, in fairness to the Assembly and the municipality of Anchorage, okay, this election was run by the state of Alaska. So in response, my concerns you should have been discussing because it affects the residents here and the election, but the fact is this election was run by the state. But I'd like to remind you of a chapter in the work I do. It was an Anchorage election of April 3rd, 2012. It was that election the next day where people were trying to go as many as 3 different polling springs and couldn't get a ballot to vote. They printed enough, but it wasn't distributed. It was later determined more than 40% of the polling springs ran out of ballots, and that's the kind of election we had. We later had basically around 3 certifications, and in one of those situations, ballots didn't suddenly appear in dealing with another certification. Should have been redone. It was a situation of an election in Anchorage of April 3rd, 2012, where they fired, and when I say they, you're responsible for the clerk, they fired the clerk. That was not appropriate, because we never found out what really happened, because you want to put someone in question on leave and you have them investigate, but when you fire someone, how do you find out the story? Now we're in 2018. Yes, you were not in charge of the election. Yes, you were not. But it happened in this community and affected Anchorage residents and affected the state election. How far it affected, we do not know. But the factor also should question is, did it happen anywhere else? What other situations occurred in this election in this state that interfered with the opportunity for the public to vote? Now, I understand that as a community you made investments of millions of dollars to make things better, and I've questioned that. But look what we have in the community. We need to question it, we need to face these people, and we need to get answers. And we need to be silent on what's happened here, because it's going to happen again like it happened in April 3rd, 2012 in Anchorage. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
With
Mr.
3
Haberman.
minutes.
Mr. Constant.
Thank you. And this is really not a question, but I believe that yesterday the zoo was a polling place and there was a closure of the zoo because of a murder investigation. And so there is more than one location.
Thank you, Mr. Constant.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify? You can testify, but ma'am, not on something you've already spoken on.
Yes.
And okay, please.
And I'll be really quick.
That's okay.
Maybe it's an influence here.
You have a full 3 minutes if you'd like it.
Yay. Hello again. My name is Caroline Ahrens. I am a resident of Stuckagon Heights, and I didn't realize there was an audience participation part to this meeting. But I just want to let you guys know a small group of residents were here about the fire tender. But a few weeks back, there were over 100 people in our neighborhood that had a meeting about the bus barn relocation. We do not want it on Tudor Road. There's a lot of people that showed up from both sides of the road, including people that talked about the traffic, the stoplight, the additional 100-some units of the senior citizen establishment that's being built across the street. We will be there on December 10th for the Planning and Zoning meeting. We keep hearing whisperings that, well, by the time it gets to Planning and Zoning, they've already made their decision, so nothing we say will have an impact. I really hope that's wrong. When you have the strong voice that showed up a couple weeks ago, we are already gathering and encouraging everybody to show up again, and we will be there. So,
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Participation. Would anyone else like to participate? Okay. All right, so we will conclude the audience participation section. We are now to assembly comments. Let's start with you, Ms. Dembossi. Do you have any comments tonight?
I do. As a matter of fact, yesterday we had an election, and I just want to congratulate everyone who not only won, but everyone who ran for office. As many of us know, it's not an easy thing to put yourself out there. And I just really appreciate everyone who is willing to serve their community. And I want to say a special congratulations to a former member of this body, a former Assembly member, Elvie Gray Jackson, has been elected to the State Senate. Elvie is a friend of mine. She's somebody I respect immensely and I enjoyed working with. And I think she's going to represent her district very well in Juneau. I know she values, public process, and she values listening to people, and she really has a good heart. She's a good, honest person, and I really do enjoy my friendship with Elvie, and I just want to say congratulations, and may you serve your community well.
Thank you, Ms. Dembossi. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. This testimony tonight and this ongoing community conversation, that's really difficult, and I've been in some ways at the forefront of it in a lot of different arenas regarding what to do with the homeless issue. At the South Addition Community Council this last month, similar testimony, you guys aren't doing anything, you're a complete failure, nothing good is happening. Then I had 3 members of the community intervene and just say, hey, wait a minute. In the last month, since this summer, things have really changed in our neighborhood. And if you go back to the original list that these folks have been demanding from, and you look, most of them are actually accomplished. And so I would just say to folks that I recognize massive work and change that's happening, and it's hard for the public to see it because of all of the variable things that cause the emotions, because they're real. But there's a lot of good work being done by this municipality, this administration, and this body.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a moment ago, we were speaking about the state election that was held yesterday, and I think they would have had fewer problems if they'd have switched to vote by mail. I think that might be what the future holds for state elections, but of course that's out of our hands. It's up to those elected officials down in Juneau to make that decision. But I think they would have had fewer problems if they'd have had some of the superstar employees that we had working on some of our elections. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Croft.
No comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. I'll just say briefly, I heard just through media reports that there were some failures of machines in Fairbanks as well. And I agree with Mr. Peterson's sentiments. And I'll say that having spoken with our clerk, our machines are large enough to process the state election. And we do our elections in April, and y'all do yours in November, and we are perfectly willing to help you with that at a small cost. But much cheaper than it would cost for you to replace all of your machines, which are dying. It would also increase your voter turnout, which has been our experience here. So I hope the state takes a serious look at vote by mail in the future. All right. Ms. LaFrance.
No comments. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance.
No
Ms.
problem.
Quinn-Davidson, thank you. Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No comments.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Mr. Weddleton.
Nothing, thanks.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to... Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Staffs. Go ahead.
It's okay. I just wanted to say that in the couple times that I've been able to participate in meetings, I've had the opportunity to hear like just a huge volume of really interesting testimony from people in the community. And regardless of whether or not I agree with it, I know most of the people who testified today have left, but I just want to say thank you to everybody who came here and testified, because I know it's not easy and it's not convenient, and it's not always interesting, but it's really important to me and I think to everyone here. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tafts. Very good sentiment to end the meeting on. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned.